after the car accident. I filed for divorce from the colonel's wife. As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, she asked with confusion, "Is it just because during the accident I saved Alex first and left you aside?" I nodded calmly and she panicked instantly. In early spring in Seattle, the wind still carried a lingering chill as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs office. I clutched the dark red divorce certificate in my hand, its rough texture against my fingertips mirroring the repeatedly worn-down self-esteem I'd endured over the past 3 years of marriage. My stomach suddenly twisted violently, followed by a dull ache in my chest, as if several broken ribs were throbbing. It had been exactly 48 hours since the car accident, and I hadn't gone to the hospital, just bought 2 painkillers at a pharmacy, because at the scene of that horrific crash, my wife, Colonel Isabella Harper, hadn't even glanced at me. "Kane, let's talk." A cold voice came from behind. I stopped and turned around. Isabella was wearing a crisp dark green military uniform that made her look even more striking, as cold and untouchable as a statue untouched by dust. Her gaze was always so sharp, as if she could see through every lie from rule breakers, yet she alone couldn't see the bandage beneath my shirt, already soaked through with blood. "The certificate has already been issued, so what's left to discuss?" I looked at her calmly. Isabella frowned slightly, that habitual condescending scrutiny reappearing. She seemed uncomfortable with my calm, unemotional tone. In her mind, Kane Miller, should be the kind of officer's wife who stays at home, always gentle and patient. "Are you still sulking?" She took half a step forward, her tone laced with exhaustion and impatience. "Just because during the accident, I saved Alex first and left you aside." I looked at her delicate face and suddenly felt it was somewhat unfamiliar. I nodded, my voice very soft. "Yes." Isabella froze. She clearly hadn't expected me to admit it so bluntly. In her script, I should have been humbly explaining or painfully accusing. Not like now, talking about it as if it were some trivial matter unrelated to me. "Kane, you need to be reasonable." She let out a sigh as if she had found the crux of the problem, and her tone became didactic again. The situation was so urgent then. Alex's car was hanging on the edge of the guardrail, and he has severe PTSD. There was the sea below. If we didn't pull him out first, he would have had a mental breakdown. And you just hit the airbag. Apart from some minor injuries, you could still get out and walk around. As a man, can't you be a little more generous? I glanced down at the tiles beneath my feet, cracks still holding traces of last night's rain. Her so-called being able to get out and walk was because at the moment the truck slammed into us, I had forcibly twisted the steering wheel, using my driver's seat to absorb the impact. Amid the thunderous crash of metal, I used my last bit of consciousness to unbuckle my seatbelt, staggering out of the car to check on her safety. But when I finally reached her, bloodied and unsteady, this heroic colonel was already holding the limp Alex close, soothing him with gentle words without even casting me a glance. "Generous." I repeated the word, a self-mocking smile curling at the corner of my mouth. "Isabella, you know that's the highest compliment you've given me in 3 years. What do you mean?" Her eyes instantly turned cold. "Kane, don't be sarcastic. I know you're upset. Alex just returned from overseas and he has no roots in Seattle as an old comrade. It's only natural for me to look after him a little more. As for the divorce, I hope you'll calm down for a few days. We'll get back together. The base can't do without you. My father's medicine, and all the household chores. You handle them best." I stared at her as if observing a species I'd never known before. So in her eyes, the only value I had as a husband was to be a good housekeeper and her father's personal caretaker. No need. I turned away from her, facing the sparse crowd in the Civil Affairs Bureau Square. "Isabella, the life-saving debt your father owed me 3 years ago, I've repaid it with hard labor. From now on, I owe you nothing, nor do I owe the Harper family anything. Kane, you stop right there." Isabella's voice rose sharply, laced with the anger of being defied. At that moment, a silver Porsche screeched to a halt at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, its tires squealing loudly. The car door opened and Alex stepped out holding a bouquet of vibrant red roses, dressed in a perfectly tailored high-end suit. his hair meticulously styled. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk of challenge played on his slightly effeminate face. "Isabella, are the procedures done?" Alex hurried over, naturally positioning himself beside Isabella as if he were the rightful partner. When his gaze swept over the divorce certificate in my hand, a flash of triumph quickly flickered in his eyes. "Brother Kane, I'm really sorry that my situation has caused such a rift between you and Isabella," Alex said with a sincere tone, yet his hand rested familiarly on Isabella's shoulder. Isabella was just doing her duty. After all, she's a soldier and saving lives is her calling. And you, how could you push Isabella to divorce over such a trivial matter? A grown man with such a petty temper will find it hard to get by in society. Isabella didn't push Alex's hand away, just stared coldly at me, as if waiting for me to apologize to Alex or beg for her forgiveness. I didn't speak, just quietly watched the pair before me. The pain in my chest grew increasingly severe. I knew it was a sign of internal bleeding. My vision began to blur slightly, but I still stood straight. For 3 years, I endured. For 3 years, I suppressed myself, forcing the once formidable Kane Miller, who had dominated the business world and struck fear into countless rivals, into the shell of an ordinary man. All because General Harper held my hand on his deathbed and said, "Kane, Isabella is proud. Take care of her for me." Now I could toss that dying wish into the trash. "Kane, Alex is speaking to you. Where are your manners?" Isabella frowned deeper when she saw I remained silent. I laughed. It was the first time in 3 years I'd laughed so freely, so coldly. "Manners are for people, not for animals." "Who the hell are you calling an animal?" Alex's face flushed crimson instantly. He stepped forward, lowering his voice to a growl in my ear. "Kane, you're nothing but a stray dog kicked out with nothing. Without the Harpers, you couldn't even afford a sip of water in Seattle. Be smart and get lost now, or I'll make sure you disappear from the city." I turned my head slightly, meeting his venomous gaze. "Is that so?" I replied softly, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Then, let's see who disappears first." Isabella sensed the tension between us. She yanked Alex away and looked at me with disgust. "Kane, you've disappointed me so much. I thought you were just mediocre. But I never expected you to become so radical and narrow-minded. Alex's company is about to partner with the world-renowned Thunder Group. His future is something like you, who only knows how to buy groceries and cook. Could never even imagine. Get out, before I decide to arrest you for disrupting public officials' work." I didn't glance at her again. I turned and walked toward the crossroads outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Each step felt like fire in my lungs. Isabella stood on the steps, watching the lonely, slender figure walking away. For some reason, her chest tightened inexplicably. For 3 years, no matter how late she came home, that person would always leave a light on and serve a bowl of steaming soup. But now, that figure walked away resolutely and coldly, as if determined to sever every trace of the past 3 years. "Isabella, don't mind him. Men like that, just know you're soft-hearted," Alex said, gently taking her hand, his face full of tenderness. "I've booked your favorite French restaurant to celebrate your single life." Isabella took a deep breath, suppressing the inexplicable unease in her heart. "Let's go." Just as they were about to get into the car, a low, dense roar suddenly erupted from the intersection not far away. It wasn't the sound of an ordinary sports car, but rather the beast-like growl of a top-tier armored engine. As a base colonel, Isabella's professional instincts made her turn her head immediately. She saw a convoy of black vehicles crossing the square with an almost domineering presence. Leading the procession were 3 black Humvee armored cars flanking a custom-made Rolls-Royce Phantom at the center. The silver spirit of ecstasy on its hood reflected a cold gleam under the sunlight. Seattle had never seen a motorcade of this caliber before. The convoy slowly came to a halt by the roadside, blocking Alex's Porsche. Alex was about to lose his temper, but when he caught sight of the black and gold license plate on the Rolls-Royce, he froze in place, sweat instantly trickling down his back. It was the emblem of a top-tier dignitary from the Department of Defense. Under Isabella's stunned gaze, the door of the central Rolls-Royce swung open. a sprightly elderly man in a tailcoat, his hair graying but his demeanor sharp, stepped out briskly, ignoring all the surrounding stares. He walked straight toward the slightly disheveled man standing by the roadside, the very man Isabella had just pushed away and berated for being mediocre and burdensome. Kane Miller. The old man stopped 3 steps in front of me. Then, under everyone's incredulous gaze, he bent down deeply, his waist parallel to the ground. "Master, your servant has arrived late. Please forgive me." The voice wasn't loud, yet it exploded like sudden thunder across the empty square. My slightly hunched posture slowly straightened at that moment. My previously indifferent gaze grew profound and sharp, like an unsheathed blade, instantly slicing through all prior gentleness. I took the black trench coat the old man handed me and casually draped it over my shoulders, covering the blood-stained old shirt beneath. "Alfred, did you bring the items?" My voice was no longer gentle, but carried the authority of someone long accustomed to command. "I have them, the presidential seal of the Seattle branch of Thor Group, as well as the unfreezing order for all assets under your name." The elderly man respectfully handed over a dark golden ring. I took the ring and slowly slid it onto the middle finger of my left hand. Turning my head, I coldly gazed at Isabella and Alex standing on the steps from a distance of over 10 meters. At that moment, Isabella felt as if an invisible hand had tightly gripped her breath. It was a look she had never seen in me before. No warmth, no resentment, only an indifference as if looking down at ants. "Isabella, is that Kane?" Alex's voice trembled as the red rose in his hand fell to the ground, scattered by the wind. Isabella didn't answer. She watched me enter the Rolls-Royce and saw the massive black fleet retreat like a receding tide. Only when the cars had completely disappeared did she realize her hands and feet had turned ice cold. "Kane, who exactly is he?" she murmured to herself. Meanwhile, in the smoothly moving Rolls-Royce, I leaned back against the leather seat, my face as pale as if it were nearly transparent. "Young master, your complexion doesn't look right." Alfred noticed the anomaly through the rear-view mirror, his voice instantly turning urgent. "Are you injured? That day of the car accident?" Isabella thought it was just a scratch. I closed my eyes, a trickle of blood escaping the corner of my lips. "Go to St. Mary's Hospital. Inform Victoria Gray that all funding to the Harper family is to be cut off immediately. Also, look into Alex." Yes. Outside the car window, the scenery of Seattle rushed past in reverse. I knew this counterattack for dignity and power had only just begun. These 3 years of restraint were not cowardice, but a means to accumulate enough strength to destroy everything. Now the prince has returned. Those who owe me, humiliate me, and betray me will pay, each debt reclaimed by my own hand. Seattle Military Base Command Center. The hall was dimly lit with only dozens of massive electronic screens flickering a cold blue light. Isabella stood before the main console, her deep green military uniform appearing particularly stark under the screen's glow. Her complexion was poor, even somewhat pale, ever since the scene outside the Civil Affairs office. The image of me stepping into that Rolls-Royce had replayed relentlessly in her mind. That sense of unfamiliarity was like a thin steel wire tightening around her heart with a dull ache. "Colonel Harper, we've retrieved the high-definition road surveillance footage from the day of the accident along with the cloud data from the vehicle's dashcam." The technician cautiously broke the deathly silence. Isabella took a deep breath, her voice slightly hoarse. "Play it." The screen flickered and the scene returned to that rainy night 48 hours earlier. In the footage, I was driving the used domestic SUV carrying Isabella home from work. The rain was heavy, blurring the view. Isabella was sitting in the passenger seat, bowing her head, replying to a message from Alex, not even noticing the massive truck speeding wildly and swaying dangerously at the side intersection. At the instant the truck was about to collide with the SUV, my actions in the footage were astonishingly fast. I didn't hesitate at all, sharply turning the steering wheel to the left by a full 1.5 turns. Isabella's pupils contracted sharply. As a seasoned officer, she knew exactly what that maneuver meant. Facing an unavoidable collision, the driver had chosen to sacrifice the driver's seat. leaving the strongest part of the vehicle frame and the safest point of impact for the passenger. Bang! The deafening crash sent chills down the spine. Even through the screen, the SUV's driver's seat instantly caved in, and a large piece of shattered windshield exploded like countless bullets. In the footage, my head slammed violently against the side airbag, and blood immediately gushed down like a torrent, staining my entire white shirt crimson. Isabella's fingers dug into the marble countertop, her nails turning blue. The surveillance footage continued to play. She saw me after lying unconscious for a few seconds, forcefully pry open the already deformed car door and stagger out, collapsing onto the ground. My right arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, seemingly broken, yet I appeared oblivious to the pain as I crawled step by painful step toward the passenger seat, trying to reach the unconscious Isabella. But just then, Alex's silver Porsche appeared in the surveillance frame. Alex screamed for the car to stop, rushed over, and embraced Isabella, who had just regained consciousness. The next scene was etched vividly in Isabella's memory. She had woken up at that moment, her eyes filled with panic, while Alex, who claimed to have nearly driven into the sea to save her, was holding her tightly. Meanwhile, I stood a few meters away in the shadows, my face covered in blood. In the footage, Isabella pushed me away as I tried to approach, uttering something with unmistakable disgust. Now, with the enhanced audio from the surveillance, she could finally hear her own words from that moment. "Kane, stop getting in the way. Go check on Alex's car. If anything happens to him, could you even afford to pay for it?" In the surveillance footage, I froze. The hand that had reached halfway to check her wound trembled violently in midair before slowly withdrawing and slipping back into the blood-stained pocket. I said nothing more, just stood there quietly, watching her embrace another man like an outsider. "Colonel Harper, shall we continue watching?" The technician whispered, not even daring to look up at Isabella's expression. "Shut it." Isabella suddenly turned and strode out of the monitoring room. Her steps were slightly unsteady. For 3 years, she had believed I was just an ordinary man, obedient, timid, and content with the stable life in the Harper household. She even thought I was somewhat weak. So, when the wealthy, witty, and charming Alex appeared, her heart naturally tilted. She thought that, on the day of the accident, I had merely been lucky to escape unharmed. But the truth was, I had risked my life to save her, and in return, she slapped me hard. "Kane, how many more things have you been hiding from me?" Isabella sped down the road toward St. Mary's Private Hospital. All she wanted now was to find me, confront me, or make amends. St. Mary's Private Hospital, the top private medical facility in Seattle. Rooms here were charged by the day. Every nurse trained in international etiquette, and only the wealthy or powerful could afford to come and go. When Isabella arrived at the VIP waiting area, she heard a sharp, piercing voice from a distance. "Kane, you heartless ingrate, come out here. Do you think I can't find you just because you're hiding in this expensive hospital? Where did you get the money to stay in a place like this? Did you steal our Harper family's property deed and pawn it?" Isabella's heart sank. It was her mother, Mrs. Harper, there. Mrs. Harper stood at the entrance of the VIP corridor, clutching a Hermes bag, hands on her hips, making a scene. Several security guards looked uneasy, but they dared not forcibly remove her, intimidated by Mrs. Harper's wealthy, high society demeanor. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Isabella hurried forward and grabbed her mother's hand. "Isabella, you've come just in time." Mrs. Harper grabbed her daughter's hand, her face filled with anger. "That coward actually dared to divorce you. Fine, go ahead and leave. But how dare he secretly hide his savings? Look at this. St. Mary's. Just one night's room fee equals half a year's worth of our food expenses. He's been living off us for years. Even your socks were bought by you. Where did he get the money?" "Mom, please stop. Kane was injured in the car accident." Isabella tried to explain, but her voice was weak and powerless. "Injured? I think he's faking it," Mrs. Harper said with a sneer. "He just wants to extort money from our Harper family. No way. Today, I'm going to make him cough up that money and apologize to Alex." Alex said, If Kane hadn't jerked the steering wheel that day, his car wouldn't have gone out of control, just as Mrs. Harper was about to charge into the hospital ward corridor again. A cold and efficient female voice came from around the hallway corner. "Mrs. Harper, since you're so fond of talking about money, our legal department has quite a few bills we'd like you to review." Isabella looked up. A woman in a dark gray professional suit with gold-rimmed glasses walked slowly toward them. Behind her followed 8 burly professional bodyguards with dark sunglasses, each step exuding overwhelming pressure. That was Victoria Gray, the executive chief of the Seattle branch of Thor Group and the first sharp blade I wielded upon my return. "Who are you? What right do you have to speak here?" Mrs. Harper, accustomed to throwing her weight around at home, eyed Victoria disdainfully. "I'm Kane's mother-in-law. When I discipline my own son-in-law, who are you to interfere?" Victoria stopped 3 steps away from Mrs. Harper, her lips curling into a mocking smile. "First, Mr. Kane has already dissolved his marital relationship with Ms. Isabella. Legally, you now have no connection to Mr. Kane whatsoever. Second," Victoria adjusted her glasses, her gaze suddenly turning sharp. "The $380 million in interest-free loans Mr. Kane secretly provided to the Harper family business over the past 3 years, as well as the high-interest loans he repaid for you from underground casinos, have all been meticulously documented. If you continue to cause trouble here, Mr. Kane's message is clear. You will be required to repay every cent with interest within 3 days." Mrs. Harper's face instantly turned deathly pale, her lips trembling. You're talking nonsense. What financial support? That was our Harper family's own business acumen." Victoria sneered, took a document from her assistant, and slapped it onto Mrs. Harper's face with a sharp smack. The Harper family business had already been insolvent 3 years ago. If it weren't for Mr. Kane mobilizing the global capital chain to forcibly bail you out, your entire family would be begging under a bridge right now. And here, this is the $1 million you lost in Las Vegas last year, which Mr. Kane also settled for you." Isabella froze in place. She had always thought the Harper family's smooth business operations in recent years were due to her father's old connections and the protection of her own military position. She never knew that the man who silently mopped floors at home and drove her to and from work had been quietly holding up the entire sky for the Harper family behind the scenes. You vile woman. You must be some little vixen Mr. Kane keeps on the side here to deceive me on purpose." Mrs. Harper, beside herself with rage, raised her hand to slap Victoria across the face. A sharp crack, yet it wasn't Victoria who had been struck. Victoria firmly grabbed Mrs. Harper's wrist and with a swift backhand delivered a hard slap across Mrs. Harper's heavily powdered face. The blow sent Mrs. Harper spinning in place, collapsing to the ground, clutching her face, dazed and unresponsive for a long moment. "Mom!" Isabella cried out, trying to rush forward, but was firmly blocked by 2 bodyguards. "Colonel Harper, out of respect for your past as Mr. Kane's wife, I offer you a piece of advice." Victoria looked down at Isabella, her gaze icy. "Some people once lost are an abyss you can never return from. Mr. Kane's patience has run out. If your Harper family dares to meddle again, I won't hesitate to erase Harper Enterprises from Seattle entirely. I want to see him. Let me see Kane." Isabella ignored her mother, staring at Victoria with a look of almost desperate determination in her eyes. Victoria fell silent for a moment as if receiving some instruction through her earpiece. "Mr. Kane says only Colonel Harper is to enter. As for this one," Victoria glanced at Mrs. Harper, who was still throwing a tantrum on the floor, "throw her out. From now on, no members of the Harper family or their dogs are allowed in St. Mary's Hospital." Isabella followed Victoria toward the VIP ward in a daze. With each step, her heart grew heavier. Armed security personnel stood at 5-meter intervals along the corridor. Even the mayor of Seattle wouldn't warrant such a display. When they reached the door of the suite at the far end, Victoria stopped. "Mr. Kane is waiting for you inside." Isabella pushed the door open. I was seated with my back to her by the floor-to-ceiling window. I wore an oversized hospital gown draped with a black leather coat. My right hand was encased in a thick cast while my left hand flipped through an English document. Besides me, 6 or 7 elderly men in white coats stood in the room. Isabella immediately recognized one of them. Dr. Herman, a world-renowned surgical expert, the luminary who had treated heads of state from multiple countries, was now humbly bending over to brief me on something. Mr. Kane, your internal bleeding is largely under control. However, the fractured rib penetrated too deeply into your lung, requiring further rest. Additionally, regarding your proposed Global Medical Hub initiative, we've drafted a preliminary plan, Dr. Herman said with utmost deference. I closed the file without turning around, merely waving my left hand faintly. The experts immediately understood and filed out one by one as they passed Isabella. They didn't even spare her a glance. The room fell into a deathly silence. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows onto my shoulders, yet couldn't dispel the suffocating chill emanating from me. Have a seat, Colonel Harper, I said, my voice calm. There was no joy of reunion, no thrill of revenge, just a cold, business-like indifference. Isabella walked to my side, studying my pale yet sharply defined profile. She opened her mouth only to find she couldn't even muster a simple sound. I'm sorry, does it still hurt? She finally managed to blurt out after a long pause, uttering this meaningless question. I finally turned my head, my deep eyes quietly fixed on her. Colonel Harper, have you checked the surveillance footage? Isabella lowered her head, unable to meet my gaze. I saw it. Kane, why didn't you tell me? If you had told me earlier that you paid for those funds, if you had said you were trying to save me on the day of the accident, what difference would it have made? I interrupted her, my tone laced with a hint of self-mockery. Tell you, and have you make a choice between me and Alex again. Isabella, you were top of your class at the military academy. Your instincts and judgment shouldn't be this poor. Isabella's face turned deathly pale. Alex, he said he was terrified. I could see his whole body trembling. He really should be shaking. I let out a cold laugh, picking up a USB drive from the table with my left hand and placing it gently in front of Isabella. This is the driving trajectory of Alex's Porsche before the collision. Colonel Harper, as a senior officer at the base, you can go back and study it carefully. Why would a car driving normally suddenly swerve into the guardrail without any obstacles in the way? And that angle, it was just right to make it look like he was on the brink of death, yet not actually falling into the sea. Isabella shot her head up. You mean he did it on purpose? Whether he did it on purpose or not, you can investigate yourself. But one thing is certain. The truck that caused our accident belonged to a transportation company that had received a large overseas transfer just half a month ago, and the account's origin. It matches exactly the overseas base where Alex was stationed. I stood up, though my body was still weak. The imposing presence of my 185-centimeter frame still sent a shiver through Isabella. I walked to her, extended my left hand, and gently brushed the shoulder insignia on her uniform. Isabella, you've been in this position for too long. You seem to have forgotten that the most unpredictable thing in this world is the human heart. You think Alex is your savior. Yet, in reality, he might just be a madman who wants to devour the Harper family through you and even eliminate me. Impossible. Alex wouldn't have the guts, Isabella murmured to herself. But even she could hear the wavering in her voice. Wouldn't have the guts. You'll get your answer at tomorrow's Seattle business banquet. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes with detached indifference. You may leave now. I'm tired. Isabella stared at this man who was once so familiar. He was right before her eyes, yet it felt like mountains and oceans stood between them. Kane, is there really no going back for us? Without opening my eyes, a cold smile played at my lips. Isabella, the moment we walked out of the civil affairs office, we became people from different worlds. And do give your mother a message for me. Tell her to stop causing scenes at St. Mary's, because next time Victoria might not settle for just a slap. Could be the entire Harper family's future at stake. Isabella walked out of the hospital ward as if her soul had been drained. The sunlight in the corridor was blinding, yet she felt a chilling cold all over her body. Just as she was about to step into the elevator, her phone vibrated violently. It was Alex calling. Isabella, where are you for tomorrow night's business gala? I specially ordered you a dress worth $1 million. We're gonna stun everyone. Mr. Kane will be there too, and I'm confident we can seal the deal. Listening to Alex's excited voice on the phone, Isabella suddenly felt nauseous. She glanced at the USB drive in her hand, and her gaze gradually turned sharp. The truth was being peeled away layer by layer, and the world she knew was crumbling inch by inch under her indifferent stare. The Golden Hall of the Seattle Peninsula Hotel. This was the heart of power in Seattle. Every inch of the marble floor seemed soaked in the scent of money. Tonight, a high-profile charity business gala was being held here, but anyone with eyes could see that charity was just a facade. The real highlight was the legendary return of the big shot, Mr. Kane, the shadowy mastermind behind Thor Group's Seattle division, who would tonight select his first strategic partner in the city. Isabella stood on the second-floor circular corridor, dressed in a special security uniform, her slender yet rigid figure accentuated by the weapon belt around her waist. As the security chief for the evening, she scanned the entire venue with sharp eyes, yet her gaze involuntarily drifted to the Harper family gathered in the corner of the first-floor lobby. Mr. Harper was now smiling broadly, weaving through the guests with a servile and obsequious demeanor that stirred an inexplicable sense of sorrow and unease in Isabella. The Harpers had indeed faced serious business troubles in recent years. What had once been maintained as a respectable facade through my covert financial support was now rapidly unraveling like a fragile veil being torn away after my withdrawal of investment following the divorce. Not far away, Alex was surrounded by a group of young men from second-tier families. Dressed in an expensive royal blue suit, he held a glass of champagne, his face radiating confidence and pride. "Mr. Alex, when Mr. Kane comes out later, you must introduce us to him," one of them called out. Sure. Alex replied with smug satisfaction, but his eyes, glancing over the crowd, hungrily fixed on Isabella above, then scanned the room as if searching for an outlet to vent his frustration. Suddenly, a slight commotion erupted at the entrance of the hall. I stepped in, having changed from my plain casual clothes into a custom-made ink black suit. The suit was impeccably tailored, perfectly outlining my cold, imposing figure, though my right hand remained slightly stiff inside the sleeve. The aura of authority that emanated from deep within, born of long years at the top, caused the doorman to hesitate even in the act of checking the invitation. Ignoring the complex gazes around me, I walked straight toward the lounge area of the hall. "Hey, isn't this our former Harper family house husband, Kane Miller?" A harsh voice rang out. Alex, accompanied by a few others, closed in like bloodhounds catching a scent. He glanced over my outfit and let out a sneer. "Where'd you rent that suit? Quite an investment." "Ha, Kane. You don't actually think you can waltz back into this circle just because you're divorced and wearing a decent pair of shoes, do you? That ticket alone could have bought groceries for the Harper household for 3 years." Mr. Harper heard the commotion and walked over, his face darkening instantly when he saw me. "Kane, what are you doing here? Haven't you embarrassed the Harper family enough already? Get out. Don't disturb the important guests who are coming soon." I calmly looked at Mr. Harper, the man I'd called father for 3 years, his eyes now filled with undisguised disgust. "I'm here to reclaim what's mine," I said calmly. "My things. Every penny in the Harper household was earned by Isabella through hard work. What do you, parasite, have that belongs to you?" Before Mr. Harper could respond, Mrs. Harper suddenly appeared from somewhere. Her face, still swollen and bruised from the beating at St. Mary's Hospital, looked distorted under thick layers of foundation. "Oh, I get it. You see, we're about to get rich. So you're coming back to beg for a reconciliation, right? Let me tell you, no way." I ignored her shouts. My gaze swept past the crowd, landing on Isabella behind the second-floor railing. She was staring at me intently, her eyes filled with shock, complexity, and a trace of panic. She hadn't even noticed herself. "Master Alex, why not just call security to throw out the stray dog who sneaked in for a free meal?" one of Alex's lackeys suggested. Alex pretentiously adjusted his bow tie and raised his voice naturally. "But since Brother Kane wants to see the world, I suppose I can oblige. Kane, if you kneel right now in front of everyone, Admit you're a thief who stole from the Harper family and swear never to bother Isabella again. I'll grant you the privilege of cleaning the glasses after the banquet. How about that? Laughter erupted around us. Isabella couldn't hold back any longer and hurried down from the second floor. Standing before me, she whispered with conflicted eyes, "This isn't where you belong. Alex is getting close to Mr. Kane's people now. He'll truly humiliate you." I looked at her, a cold smile curling at the corner of my lips. "Colonel Harper, are you really afraid I'll be humiliated? Or are you afraid I'll shatter your perfect life?" Isabella was at a loss for words at that moment. The heavy mahogany doors at the front of the hall slowly swung open. The entire room fell silent instantly. Thomas Blake, the president of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, a domineering figure who usually strutted arrogantly on news channels, now hunched his back like a humble attendant, ushering a group of people into the venue. "He's here. Mr. Kane is here." Alex excitedly straightened his clothes, his eyes gleaming with fervor as he pulled Mr. Harper forward. "Isabella, Mr. Harper, come with me to greet Mr. Kane. This is the moment that will decide the fate of the Harper family." Isabella was dragged to the front of the crowd. Thomas Blake stepped up to the microphone, his expression solemn and reverent. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have the honor of welcoming Mr. Kane from the Thor Group. Mr. Kane has returned to Seattle to select a deep cultivation project. Now, let us welcome Mr. Kane to the stage." All eyes were fixed intently on the grand entrance. Yet, no new distinguished figure appeared at the door. Thomas scanned the room with his gaze before finally settling on the figure in the corner of the hall, the one who had been mocked by the crowd and expelled by the Harpers. He jogged through the crowd amidst dead silence, coming to an abrupt halt before me. Then, under the horrified stares of everyone present, bowed deeply at a perfect 90-degree angle. "Mr. Kane, everything is ready. Please take the stage and oversee the proceedings." At that moment, the entire Golden Hall seemed to have been muted. The champagne glass in Alex's hand clattered to the floor, shattering into pieces, the spilled liquid staining his million-dollar suit. Yet he remained oblivious, his eyes bulging like a dead fish, his lips trembling violently. Mr. Harper's outstretched hand, originally poised for a handshake, froze midair like a ridiculous statue. As for Isabella, her mind felt as though it had been blasted by a sudden white light, all her understanding collapsing in that single second. Kane, the man who did her laundry daily, brewed her hangover soup, the one she had berated as mediocre and unambitious, was none other than the Thunder God, the master who could overturn the heavens with a flick of his wrist. I adjusted my cuffs, ignoring the petrified crowd around me, and ascended the steps one by one. Each crisp footfall against the marble echoed like a hammer blow against the Harpers' hearts. Taking the microphone from Thomas, I stood at the very center of the spotlight. Someone just asked me, "What have I come to reclaim?" I scanned the room, my gaze lingering for a moment on the faces of the Harper family. The coldness in my eyes nearly made Mrs. Harper faint on the spot. 3 years ago, I was entrusted to protect the Harper family anonymously. I gave the Harpers countless opportunities to reach the top. Yet, it seems you prefer daydreaming. I pulled out a dark golden folder from my coat, the investment proposal the Harper family had begged and pulled countless strings to submit. Alex said he was confident about securing this deal. I turned to the pale-faced Alex in the audience. His legs gave way and he collapsed to the floor, his throat emitting a hoarse sound, unable to utter a single word in front of the city's elite. I tore the document into pieces without a flicker of emotion. The snow-white shreds fluttered down like a belated funeral offering. From this moment on, all Thor-related industrial chains in Seattle are strictly prohibited from engaging in any business dealings with the Harper family or Alex's family. Anyone who violates this will be making an enemy of me. Kane Miller. Mr. Harper trembled violently, unable to catch his breath, and collapsed directly into Mrs. Harper's arms. I put down the microphone and prepared to leave the stage. "Kane." Isabella's voice, choked with tears, rang out piercingly across the hall as she pushed past the bodyguards. She rushed to the foot of the steps and looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "You've been lying to me all along. Haven't you? You watched me struggle like a fool out there. Watched me beg for the Harper family's business while you stood coldly by. Watching me fall into the abyss. Did you find that amusing? I stopped in my tracks, looking down at her from above. Isabella, 3 years ago, I gave the Harper family a chance to change their fate. My voice was low, yet carried a chilling intensity. It was an exclusive authorization for international trade. Had they signed it, the Harpers would now be the foremost family in Seattle. But the day I handed the contract to your father, you were outside celebrating Alex's birthday without even glancing at it. Your father threw it into the shredder, calling me a delusional good-for-nothing. Isabella froze. Her mind raced as if retrieving that detail from the depths of her memory. From that day on, I understood. The Harpers didn't deserve such a future. I walked past her toward the monitoring room backstage. Kane, stop. You saved my life. I cleared your name. But you can't destroy the Harper family like this. Isabella shrieked hysterically behind me. I didn't turn back. It wasn't me who destroyed the Harpers. It was your greed, ignorance, and arrogance. Entering the surveillance room, Victoria was already waiting there. Young master, the activity in Alex's private account has been investigated. Just as you suspected, he had a secret meeting with a senior executive from the Harper family before the banquet began, involving the illegal transfer of the Harper family's core technology. Additionally, regarding the whereabouts of that contract from 3 years ago, I've also found evidence. Mr. Harper didn't just ignore the contract. He secretly swapped it out and sold it to the Harper family's arch-rival, using the money to cover his gambling debts. I stared at Mr. Harper's face on the screen, his expression a mix of desperation and terror. My gaze icy. Isabella thought her family was merely mediocre. She had no idea how rotten to the core they truly were. Lighting a cigarette, I watched the smoke curl in front of the surveillance monitor. Notify Carter Miller to initiate legal proceedings. What I want Alex to take away tonight isn't just humiliation. It's shackles for the rest of his life. Yes. On the screen, the banquet hall was in chaos. Isabella was slumped feebly at the base of the steps, while Alex was trying to sneak out of the venue. I extinguished my cigarette. The real show was just beginning. Seattle Military Base. Interrogation Room 3. This was a place where Isabella once held absolute control. She was the Ice Queen here, the embodiment of discipline and justice. But today, the air in the interrogation room was suffocatingly heavy. The 8 large characters on the wall, leniency for confession, severity for resistance, glared starkly under the harsh, shadowless light. I sat in the shadows across the interrogation table, draped in a deep black cashmere coat, my fingertips lightly tapping the cold surface across from me. Alex was shackled to the specialized interrogation chair. His once pristine suit was now crumpled, beads of cold sweat trickling from his temples and pooling into a small puddle on the table. Isabella, help me. This must be a misunderstanding. Kane is getting back at me. He's fabricating evidence. Alex shouted frantically at the one-way glass in the interrogation room. He knew Isabella was behind the glass watching him, but she ignored his barking. Instead, she turned to the man beside her who was organizing documents. Carter Miller, the legal world's so-called butcher. He never took cases with a win rate below 99%. Once he got involved, opponents didn't just lose everything. They usually ended up with a luxurious prison package. Master, the chain of evidence is complete. Carter's voice was devoid of emotion as he pushed a thick file in front of Alex. Mr. Alex, based on the evidence we have, the car accident 3 days ago was not an accident. A week before the incident, you transferred $2 million through an overseas account to the wife of the truck driver involved. Meanwhile, your Porsche underwent precise brake system modifications 3 days prior to the incident, ensuring that the dash cam would activate its victim protection mode during high-speed impact. This is legally defined as insurance fraud and attempted murder. You're lying. That's... Alex's voice was hoarse from shouting, his eyes bloodshot with rage. I was saving Isabella. I'm a hero. I finally spoke, slowly rising to my feet. I walked over to Alex and leaned down to stare into his eyes. Those eyes that once brimmed with tenderness and restraint now resembled an abyss. Chillingly cold. Alex, your biggest mistake was underestimating my patience and overestimating your intelligence. Did you really think that heavy rain that night would wash away all traces? You didn't know that all the high-definition cameras on that stretch of road were upgraded 6 months ago by a tech company under Thor Group. You thought you'd picked a blind spot, but under our infrared lenses, every move you made was as obvious as a clown performing in broad daylight. I turned my head toward the one-way mirror, my voice low but clear enough for those behind the glass to hear. Colonel Harper, do you still want to keep watching? The interrogation room door swung open. Isabella walked in. Her steps were heavy, each one as if treading on knives. In her hand was a freshly delivered internal memo, her face paler than the paper itself. Kane, she said, looking at me with confusion and terror in her eyes. The Defense Department just called. They said the 5 major cases I handled over the past 3 years were only solved because a mysterious intelligence unit was providing critical data support behind the scenes. And since that unit has revoked all authorization, the first and second class honors awarded for those cases are now under review. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling uncontrollably. That intelligence unit. They're also your people, aren't they? I said nothing, just stared at her coldly. Isabella suddenly broke down. She slammed her hand on the table and shouted at me. You're so powerful. You could have stood beside me in the sunlight, fighting together. Why pretend to be a useless man? Why watch me like a joke? Calmly accept honors that don't belong to me. Are you enjoying this? Watching your wife dance in the palm of your hand? Does it give you a sense of accomplishment? Honors that don't belong to me. I let out a cold laugh, my gaze growing sharp. Isabella, when you were sipping wine at the victory banquet, basking in your colleagues' praise while locking me out and calling me a grocery boy with the stink of cooking oil, saying I'd embarrass you, did you ever think about how those achievements came about? I pointed at Alex, my voice growing colder. When you were sneering at me in the hospital for this man who meticulously planned a murder. Did you ever consider that if it weren't for me cleaning up all the Harper family's messes behind your back these past 3 years, your so-called goddess of the military would have long been dragged down by their filth? Isabella staggered, nearly collapsing. For 3 years, she had believed herself to be heaven's favored child, a miracle of the military world. She even thought I wasn't good enough for her because I was too lowly, too lacking in ambition. Yet the truth was I had gathered all the light upon her while remaining hidden in the shadows, becoming her shadow, her shield, and she had shattered that shield with her own hands. Alex, now it's your turn. I no longer looked at Isabella, shifting my focus back to Alex. Kane, you can't kill me. This is a society governed by law. Alex shrank back in terror. Isabella, save me. I did all this for you. I just loved you too much. I wanted you to see that I'm more useful than Kane. I snapped my fingers. Carter immediately activated the multimedia projector in the interrogation room. The screen didn't display a car accident, but rather secret recordings and videos of Alex overseas. In the video, Alex was embracing a seductive foreign woman, holding a wine glass and grinning maliciously. That woman from the Harper family. Just a tool. Once I deal with the Harpers, get the technology patent from Mr. Harper, and eliminate Kane, that useless son-in-law, Isabella will have no choice but to obey me. Then I'll transfer the Harper family's assets and return home. No one will even recognize who she is anymore. Alex's maniacal laughter echoed from the video. The interrogation room fell into a deathly silence. Isabella stared at the screen as if struck by lightning. The man she had always regarded as her true love, her soulmate, had from the very beginning only seen her as a disposable stepping stone. This is your love, I said, looking at Alex. Alex, the Harper family's patent. Mr. Harper already mortgaged it to me for $5 million 3 days ago to cover his gambling debts. In other words, what you've gone to such lengths to obtain is now in my trash can. No, that's impossible. Mr. Harper promised me. Alex slumped in his chair, his eyes completely vacant. By the way, there's one more thing. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. Did you really think your tens of millions in overseas investments were successful? Actually, the financial advisor handling your portfolio. He's one of mine now. Not only will you go to prison, but you also owe Thunder God Group $300 million in debt. Even if you die in jail, your family will never be able to repay this debt. Because of your joint liability guarantee. Alex let out a desperate howl, then suddenly foamed at the mouth and collapsed into unconsciousness. Take him away. I waved my hand. Several waiting bodyguards and inspectors outside entered, dragging Alex out of the interrogation room like a dead dog. Only Isabella and I remained in the interrogation room. She stood there in a daze. The military uniform she had once been so proud of now seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds. Pressing her head down in shame. Kane, I was wrong. She finally broke down in tears, the makeup streaking down her face, making her look utterly wretched. Please give me another chance. I don't want those honors anymore. And I don't want the Harpers either. Can we remarry? Let's go back to that home. I'll cook for you every day. I'll make up for everything I owe you these past 3 years. I walked up to her and reached out as if to pat her head like I used to. A glimmer of hope flashed in Isabella's eyes as she trembled and closed them, waiting for that familiar touch. But my hand merely straightened her crooked collar flower. Colonel Harper, this uniform no longer suits you. You violated base regulations by illegally accessing surveillance footage for Alex's sake. I've already submitted a formal complaint to the Oversight Committee. Isabella, as a citizen, I'm upholding my rights. As a victim, I demand a fair judgment. From today onward, you're no longer a base colonel. You're just a public official under investigation. You're going to ruin my career with your own hands. Isabella stared at me in disbelief. It wasn't me who ruined your career. It was you. I turned toward the door, my black coat slicing a cold arc through the air. When you saved Alex, you destroyed the last shred of affection I had for you. Now I'm just taking back everything that never belonged to you in the first place. Kane, are you really this heartless? Isabella screamed hysterically behind me. I didn't turn around. Heartless. If I were truly heartless, right at the moment of the car crash, I would have let go of the steering wheel and sent her and Alex to meet God. I walked out of the headquarters building, the air outside cool as water. Victoria waited by the car and handed me the latest report. Master, Mr. Harper has already been surrounded by debt collectors at the villa. All of the Harper's properties, vehicles, and shares under their names have been seized and frozen by the court just 10 minutes ago. Also, the video of General Harper's final will has been restored. I took the tablet and watched the video of the kind old man. The image of General Harper on his deathbed 3 years ago. Master, what General Harper wanted to say to you in his final moments might be different from what you imagined. Victoria said softly. I stared at the screen, my fingertips trembling slightly. Go to the Harper family's old mansion. I commanded coldly. That was where it all began, and where it would all end. The Harpers owed me more than just 3 years of youth and tolerance. The truth hidden beneath the guise of gratitude was long overdue to be fully exposed. Seattle's reign has never been reasonable. It started last night and by this evening showed no sign of stopping. Instead, it grew even more violent. Large raindrops pounded against the metal-clad glass facade of the Ascard Group headquarters, producing a dull, dense, cracking sound, as if thousands of war drums were being struck simultaneously. I stood at the top floor before the floor-to-ceiling windows, 300 meters above ground, the highest point in Seattle, looking down as the city's neon lights blurred and distorted in the rain like a shattered palette of colors. Once I thought the city was vast enough to hide my 3 years of mediocrity. Now I thought it was small, so small that with just a flick of my fingers, I could reduce several of its families to ashes. Master, the ceremony begins in 10 minutes. Victoria approached from behind, holding a warm cup of black coffee. The guests downstairs have all arrived, the political and business elite of Seattle. Anyone with a name hopes to witness the coronation of the new king at this moment. I took the coffee, feeling the warmth through the cup's surface, but my gaze remained fixed on the street below, like an ant colony. Is she here? I asked calmly. Victoria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She's downstairs. Harper's old mansion was forcibly sealed this afternoon. Mr. Harper has been taken away for investigation on charges of illegal technology patent transfer and long-term involvement in underground gambling. Mrs. Harper made a scene at the mansion's entrance and was taken away by several creditors for a heart-to-heart talk. As for Isabella, she stood in the rain for 3 hours. I let out a cold laugh, saying nothing. The most crucial part, Victoria lowered her voice, is that she's wearing the wedding dress you wore when you married 3 years ago. Though it's outdated and soaked through by the rain. She just knelt there at the company's entrance, refusing to leave, no matter who tried to persuade her. I lifted the coffee and took a sip, the bitterness spreading across my tongue. Coming to beg in a wedding dress. Isabella, you've finally fallen into the cliché. 3 years ago, you thought this dress was a shackle restraining your flight. 3 years later, you've turned it into a lifeline to reclaim power. Let her come up. I set down my coffee cup, my voice as cold as the rain outside the window. Meet her on the rooftop at the top floor. I'm going to give this absurd chapter of my past a proper burial at the highest point in Seattle. On the rooftop at the top of the building. The wind raged when Isabella finally came into my view. I almost didn't recognize her. The once proud, aloof base colonel, always in a perfectly tailored military uniform, was gone, replaced by a drenched, disheveled woman. Her once white wedding dress was soaked through, heavy and dull, dragging on the ground like a tattered shroud. Her hair clung to her face in disarray. Her delicate features turned purple from the cold wind, and she swayed unsteadily. Behind her stood a crowd of Seattle's elite. My celebration had deliberately arranged a panoramic transparent viewing platform. Now countless eyes filled with mockery, pity, and morbid curiosity were fixed on this former goddess of Seattle's military. Kane. Isabella spoke, her voice torn apart by the wind. She staggered toward me, each step producing a dull thud as her soaked shoes hit the ground. I stood under the shelter of the eaves, hands clasped behind my back. My black suit remained untouched by a single drop of water, creating a brutally stark contrast with her wretched state. Kane, I beg you, spare the Harpers. Her legs suddenly gave way and she fell heavily to her knees 5 meters away from me. The sound of her knees hitting the concrete was still audible through the howling wind. I know I was wrong. I truly know it now. I shouldn't have treated you like that before. I shouldn't have taken your sacrifices for granted. I shouldn't have abandoned you during the car accident. She wept hysterically, tears mingling with the rain. Tell me what you want. As long as you spare my father. As long as you give the Harpers a way out, I'll do anything. She suddenly looked up, her eyes filled with a desperate madness. I can quit being a cop. I can stay at home every day like before. I can bear your children. I swear I'll only ever listen to you for the rest of my life. Please just give me back the Kane I used to know. I looked at her, feeling not even a ripple of emotion in my heart. There wasn't even the slightest thrill of revenge, just a profound weariness. Isabella, have you misunderstood something? I stepped slowly out from under the eaves, letting the rain soak into my overcoat as I looked down at her from above. Do you think I'm destroying the Harpers because I still hate you? Because I still care about your betrayal back then? She froze, staring at me blankly. You're wrong. I crouched down, meeting those eyes filled with pleading. Destroying the Harper family was necessary because the Harpers themselves were a cancer growing on Seattle's business chain. Mr. Harper's greed, Alex's malice, and your arrogance. These things would have erupted at some point. Even without me, I merely accelerated the process. As for you, I reached out, my fingertip gently lifting the dull, cheap brooch on her chest. Do you really think wearing this wedding dress could awaken some long-dormant warmth in me? Isabella, your thirst for power has even surpassed your dignity. That's what I despise most about you. No. That's not true. I love you, Kane. I truly love you. She struggled to grab the hem of my clothes, but I sidestepped, avoiding her grasp. Love me. I stood up with a mocking chuckle. Isabella, you don't understand love at all. What you love is merely a shadow, one that tolerates you unconditionally, serves you anytime, provides emotional support without asking for anything in return. When you realized this shadow was actually a deity forever beyond your reach, your so-called love arrived belatedly. This isn't love. It's resentment. It's the fear of loss. I turned and walked toward the rooftop edge where a massive LED display stood in standby mode. Young master, the video is ready. Victoria appeared silently beside me, holding a remote control. Play it. Some truths. Since we've reached the endgame, there's no need to keep them hidden any longer. The screen lit up. It was 3 years ago in the study of the Harper family's old mansion on the last day of General Harper's life. The image was slightly pixelated, but the kind old man's voice was exceptionally clear. In the footage, General Harper was holding my hand, his gaze sharp and lucid, nothing like a man with a clouded mind. Kane, I've wronged you. General Harper sighed in the video. I know who you are, the heir to the Thor Group. You came to Seattle under a false name to uncover the truth about your mother's car accident years ago. And it was this old man who, using the life debt your father owed me from years past, forced you to stay by Isabella's side. Isabella froze. She stared at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. General Harper continued in the video. Isabella, I spoiled her too much. She looks down on everyone, yet she can't see people's true intentions. I fear that after I'm gone, someone like Alex will devour her whole. Kane, I beg you to protect her for 3 years. Consider it repaying the Harper family's debt. After 3 years, if she still hasn't learned, if you still choose to leave, then it's the Harper family's fate. Don't feel guilty. It's the path she chose for herself. The video abruptly ended there. I turned around and looked at Isabella, whose face was ashen. Did you hear that clearly? I said calmly. These 3 years of marriage were essentially a transaction. My 3 years of endurance and protection of the Harper family repaid General Harper for saving my father's life. I saved you, took care of you, endured the humiliation from your entire family. Not because I was weak, but because I was fulfilling a contract. So the moment we walked out of the Civil Affairs office, the contract was terminated. I owe the Harper family nothing, and I owe you, Isabella, no emotions whatsoever. So that's how it was. Isabella murmured in utter despair. The so-called marriage of gratitude she had always been so proud of was actually an umbrella of protection bought with her grandfather's dignity. And beneath this umbrella, she had been trampling all over the very person who could have saved her life. Kane, I'm begging you for the last time. She collapsed into the puddle, her wedding dress now completely blackened by mud. Even without love, for Grandpa's sake, don't let my father go to prison. He's old. He can't take it. I have handed over all the evidence of Mr. Harper's embezzlement and collusion with Alex to the police. I looked at her coldly. The law is just. Isabella, as a former soldier, you should understand this better than I do. The Harper family owes a debt to Seattle's investors, and Mr. Harper owes a debt to the law. I stopped looking at her and turned to walk toward the entrance to the rooftop. Kane, are you really going to take things this far? She screamed behind me, her voice breaking with anguish. I halted but didn't turn back. Isabella, this is reality. When dignity is trampled to its limit, mercy is no longer necessary. You should be grateful I only took away your future and family fortune and didn't leave you utterly in the dark as you did to me after the car accident. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Isabella wearing that ridiculous wedding dress, sitting alone on the storm-ravaged rooftop against the backdrop of Seattle's most bustling scenery. She looked like a ghost abandoned by time. The celebration officially began. I changed into a dark gold evening gown and stepped onto the podium under the gaze of all present. Everyone, starting today, the Harper family and the Alex family no longer exist in Seattle. The Seattle branch of the Thor Group will be officially renamed the Thor Global Strategic Center. Applause erupted from the audience. I took the champagne from Alfred and gazed toward the distant sea. The storm in Seattle had calmed, but my journey had only just begun. The challenge letters from several established overseas financial conglomerates had already arrived on my desk. The game ahead would be far more thrilling than this small Seattle affair. Power, wealth, dignity. What I had lost, I had reclaimed tenfold. And what I desire in the future, I will build with my own hands. As for Isabella, and those 3 years filled with the smell of cooking oil and humiliation, Let them rot completely in the soil of Seattle. Washed away by this downpour. Stepping out of the hall, Alfred opened a black umbrella for me. Young master, our next destination is London. The private jet is ready. Let's go. I settled into the Rolls-Royce. The window slowly rose, and the wipers swung rhythmically, wiping away the last traces of water from the glass. The world before me was crystal clear.